Yes, good morning. Okay, so this conference, a lot of the focus of the conference is how institutions are now engaging in the digital asset space. And over the last few years, you've seen institutions, first of all, experimenting, doing proofs of concepts, working with digital assets in the lab. But they've now matured to the point where these now have to be integrated into large organizations with all the complexity that entails from operational, technical point of view. So I'm very happy to have with me today some real leaders in this space who actually have their sleeves rolled up doing this stuff. So I will let each of them introduce themselves. Basically, we have Miraj from Maybank, Rajaram from BondEvalue, Karthik from HSBC, and Roshak from UBS. We're missing one. Okay, guys, we'll run from here. Maybe if you'd like to kick off introductions.
Hello. Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Anthony. This is Karthik. I work for HSBC Security Services Technology. I'm global head of data, digital, and innovation. My role involves implementing our data and digital strategy, and digital asset strategy is part of that. That's the next frontier for us, and it's up to me to deliver the solutions in production. I'm a bit reluctant to mention innovation in my title because in yesterday's session, Anthony, you mentioned anybody with the innovation in the title is not actually innovating. So I'm a bit careful about it. So yeah, that's it about me. Over to you, Richa.
Hey, hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and to be with this panel. I work at UBS 15 years. This year happens to be my 15th year at UBS, and I'm looking after technology risk across our post-trade settlement platforms. Post-trade is once the equities and everything gets clearing, settlement. So these are systems that are connecting to the various clearing houses across the world. So I'm quite working with them for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've spent a lot of time building these systems. The other thing I would say is I wouldn't use the word innovative, like you said, but I would say that I'm quite interested in emerging topics, fintech. I've mentored companies in the startup space, both in Hong Kong, where I've worked, and here in Singapore. And I'm looking forward to the discussion here today. One thing which I want to just mention, the comments which I'm going to say today are my own comments. UBS as a company, we are not actively promoting cryptocurrency to our investors at this stage, but we are very interested in the underlying technology, the distributed ledger technology and tokenization. Those do remain our areas of focus. So just wanted to say that. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Raj. I'm the co-founder and CTO at BondEvalue, where a couple of years back we launched the world's first fractional bond exchange with the blockchain being the underpinning of it. So we are, I guess, one of the few that are in production in a regulated environment, and have had to wrestle with the benefits as well as the challenges of bringing a true private blockchain network.
Very good, thank you all. So certainly you have moved beyond just projects in innovation labs, and you're doing this. It means you really are innovative and innovating. So very good. Maybe just to kick off, maybe with Roshak. So overall, what do you see? You talked a little bit about what you are and you aren't focusing on, but what do you see the big institutional opportunities in this digital asset space right now?
So let's see, right? Do we have opportunities? Yes, absolutely. Are they big opportunities? Yes. Do they also come with risks? Yes. And have we managed them? Kind of. If I look at opportunities right now, I think the two big ones right now are tokenization and distributed ledger technology. The idea that we can represent physical real assets into a digital space making it more accessible to the public, allowing fractional distribution of assets, I think that is spectacular, and that opens up numerous use cases. For us personally, we've been putting together something called crypto gold. What crypto gold basically does is you can buy gold, and within a couple of minutes it's going to show up on your app that you have purchased a tokenized version of gold. The difference though is that it is not speculative, because when we add gold to your application, we are also putting an equivalent amount of gold in the vault behind us, right? So that's how we are doing risk mitigation around that. The other opportunity around distributed ledger, a number of clearinghouses and exchanges around the world are doing work around that. Australia has been a front runner in this. We've all heard about it. They are replacing their chess settlement engine with a blockchain distributed ledger settlement system. Unfortunately, the program in Australia has had delays, but hopefully it does go live end of this year. We're also doing work with SET in Thailand, where we are working on a distributed ledger settlement system. So there are numerous opportunities around that. In Swiss as well, which we are the Swiss bank, we launched the first digital bond last year in November 2021, together with the STX there. And I would say the regulatory landscape is improving, continuing to mature, and that is a good thing for us. The more protections that are out there for customers, for investors, the less speculative the whole thing becomes, and the less volatile it becomes, the more interest and more opportunities we can see. So I see that as a good news.
Very good. And Karthik, building on that, for HSBC, yeah.
Sure, yeah, the power of, let's say, HSBC franchise is our network, right? And what it means for security services is to understand the local nuances, local regulations, the connectivity details. I'm purely talking from tech perspective here, considering the subject we are on. And today, we are able to connect to hundreds of market infrastructure providers across the globe using our global network, both global custodian as a global custodian, as well as using our sub-custody network. And when it comes to digital assets, as I said before, that's the new frontier for us, and we have to figure out how to provide similar expertise to our clients with regards to offering them the connectivity, the last mile connectivity, understanding various protocols, and provide them a seamless solution that helps the business grow. So from opportunity perspective, there's plenty that we see. We are investing heavily in this space. And as Rochak mentioned earlier, tokenization is an area of interest for us. We are in advanced stage with regards to tokenization. Digital assets custody, which is our bread and butter. Custody is our bread and butter, and therefore digital assets custody is a natural extension of that process. Again, completely different mindset is needed with regards to how we used to handle, how our technology used to handle traditional securities versus digital assets. A long way to go. We are working actively in that space as well. Lastly, I would also say we are pretty big in payments and FX as a whole. The HSBC network, when it comes to payments and FX, is one of the biggest players in the region. And therefore, we have a natural interest with regards to CBDC as well. We have trusted relationship with our existing regulators, local governments, and that will continue. And therefore, we will continue to work closely with the regulators to give them advice as well as understand their challenges and see how we can work together in bringing CBDC to the next level of payments and how do we integrate that with our BAU process. So those are some of the things we are actively looking at and areas of opportunities for us, Anthony.
Very good. And we've seen that the last couple of years, well, everything's been happening with stable coins in the crypto space, but not really suitable for very large, high-value transactions for large institutions. But I guess ultimately, when you can have like CBDCs and you can do large value settlement of securities in real time, then that will get really exciting, right?
Yep.
In the meantime, so we've got two leading FIs here, and we've got a leading bond tokenization fintech here as well. And I think one of the themes in this space you see a lot of fintechs, a lot of FIs starting to work together, right? So how does that work? What's your experience been maybe from both the fintech and from the FI side of a small company working with a large FI with a massive IT and operations capability? How's that for you, Raj? How do you find those experiences working with these big guys?
I think it's been very interesting. It's been challenging, of course. So part of it is that there are two things here, right? So one of it is that now this is a completely new kind of infrastructure that has new kinds of protocols, new kinds of authentication, security mechanisms, encryption mechanisms, etc. And getting an infrastructure where multiple participants can get on the same network, where it's more than just messaging, right? So far, you have various networks, whether it's Swift, whether it's connecting to a network, exchange via fix, etc., etc. So all that has been figured out. But how do you have a network where all of you have a database effectively, a ledger, right? And then there's more ports to be opened from the network perspective, and then the underlying security mechanisms are vastly different. So they're not there in the institution's protocol so far, or the security standards, right? So that's one of the challenges. And as we work institution by institution, right, we are figuring that out. I think the good thing is there's a lot of passion and intent within the institutions to actually get into the space, to innovate, to figure out. But unlike in a startup where we are fairly lightweight, in an institution you have to go through a lot of, I think yesterday as well, some of the panels talked about it, right? So you have to go through legal, you have to go through InfoSec, you have to go through networking, you have to go through so there are so many different teams that have to give their approval, which means they have to get educated into something that's really new and something that they've not really experienced firsthand to be able to be comfortable with enough to move fast. I think that's one. The second aspect also is that unlike in conventional systems, not blockchain related, when you have issues, right, we can literally patch issues in a few minutes today. If there's a production issue, right? But in a blockchain network, it completely changes character, because now it's not just you patching, it's everybody having to patch at the same time. And that, again, is a challenge.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine that sort of when you're actually maturing systems, how you manage upgrades, migrations, all of those sorts of things. And from the institutional side, Karthik, maybe working with fintechs, how do you approach that?
Yeah, challenges are plenty. We have only 30 minutes. I can talk about it for all day because it's the biggest part of our job, solving these challenges. So some of the basic stuff we need to think about is, like Mike mentioned in the previous session, the 24/7 availability of our systems, right? So we are not 24/7 today by any means. And when you want to put everything together, it's not easy. And that's something we need to think about, see how to integrate. That's challenge number one. With regards to, let's say, the operating model, again, a huge challenge. We don't talk about that often, right? How do we make this platform work in production? So it's easy to talk about the technology separately, the business case separately, but to fit them all together, put them all together and make it work is the biggest challenge. So we are talking about air-gap solutions, which is offline. We are talking about cold storage, which is offline. But we are talking about technology, automation, and this is as advanced as it gets, digital assets and so on. But the reality is very different. So how do we pull it all together to have a seamless operating model? I don't think many of us have cracked it yet. So this is something technology, operations, and product always work closely on. We have to work together along with, let's say, our fintech partners, technology partners, to really make it work. So those are some of the challenges we are facing during the early phases. The third big one is the integration with our back office systems, because the problem is here and now, at least as far as my job is concerned, it's about bringing these solutions to production. But when we look at all the sessions that we had, we talked about tokenization of assets, digital currencies, but today none of them work together. They're all silos, right? Therefore, you still have to integrate all these things back to your legacy applications, or let's say back office applications, to ensure the end-to-end flow is automated. And that's the biggest challenge, and that takes a lot of our time to make this work, actually. So those are some of my observations, Anthony.
Yeah, very good. And Roshak, for you in UBS, and I know you're doing a lot, you referenced a lot of fintech collaboration, but what's been your experience of that?
I think absolutely. The lot of things that we do are very deeply invested in this space. We have Future for the Finance Challenges, where we are inviting startups with 3 to 5 years of sort of a runway to come and partner with us. The biggest thing that fintechs and startups need usually is they need to work with real data. They've got the technology, they want to test it out, but it's impossible to test it out unless you are able to get hold of real-time transactional banking data, and which is the thing that we offer them. So if they come to this particular program that we have, for example, the future of the finance challenges and many other things that we do similar to that, we are able to offer them mentorship. They come under our wings for a period of time. We can work in a sandbox environment through which they can further enhance and develop the technology. In addition to that, we are also invested in the wider system. For example, recently, MAS is running the Accelerator program, through which startups can submit in their bids and go through the Accelerator program. We are one of the, I would say, sponsors of that, in the sense that we are putting corporate resources. Myself and a few of my colleagues, we are providing mentorship to startups who are coming through that. So I would say challenges are in both ways. We want to learn from the fintechs, what their technology is. We want to make sure that we don't end up in a lot of bureaucracy that we usually get in a big organization like ours. There are a lot of approvals and governance process. We want to move quicker, be more agile, and be more nimble. And at the same time, we want to offer to companies outside an opportunity to work with real data. I think it's a win-win combination.
Very good. And so, Raj, you're collaborating with the big FI, right? You've got through the onboarding, the due diligence, the legal, the penetration testing, the information security, all this good stuff. So now you've actually got to run this thing. So what are then the challenges working together operationally once you have this up and running?
I think it's interesting because the challenge is almost before. I think, so Karthik mentioned the 24/7, right? So one of the things that we find challenging is to get agreement on what that uptime is. And in sort of distributed ledger systems, and especially using a certain kind of consensus, which is deterministic, which is non-forking, PBFT, you need a certain number of nodes up at all times for it to work, and so on and so forth, right? So once we get into production, I think the challenge is, again, operational in nature after that, right? Now we have got all these various nodes running in different environments, in different organizations, right? And how do you know what the status of their, how do you keep, earlier you would just track internally, right? Uptimes, errors, etc. Now you need to have the ability to track across the network. And so there needs to be a lot more collaboration, a lot more on the operational front as well, versus previously you could be independent in that regard to get the benefits of that. The second thing is also scheduling upgrades, deployments, right? There's a lot of coordination involved because the scheduling of resources, for example, agreements on what is high severity versus low severity, what kind of turnaround times you get. So all of that has to coordinate and match. So having a really good governance model that's pre-agreed is super important for you to be successful after that.
Very good. And then, so on the FI side, you've now got this fintech, you've worked together, you've got this shiny new digital asset platform, it's in production, but then you've got the small issue of you've got all of your legacy, your existing tech stack, operations, etc. And I guess the operations team then want the right reporting and integration, etc. So how do you approach then, once you've got this up and running, the integration with your legacy environment in a large organization?
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not in production yet. We're going live pretty soon, so just to set the expectation. But yes, there are a lot of challenges, right? Fundamentally speaking, let's say, look at your existing process around screening and how different it is from, let's say, a security screening, counterparty screening versus screening in digital asset space. So that again requires front to back rewiring, new ways of working, new solution, new partners, new data points, and so on. And these are some of the things that we are working with, let's say, our legal compliance teams to figure out how AML process works, how CDD process works, and so on. So again, a lot of thinking is involved. We haven't necessarily cracked all of them, but some active discussions are going on in that space. Similarly, on your point about working with our fintech partners, what we also realize is you start with one, then you realize by the time you onboard a particular partner, and you realize that there are 5 others behind the scenes. There's one for node hosting, one for screening, one for market data, so on and so forth. So it goes on, and then there's a bit of frustration. At the same time, people are now beginning to realize what you see is not what you get. There's a lot more to it, and therefore it's a lot more involved process, which is what is making the go live time a little bit. It takes us a bit longer to go live. But yeah, those are the challenges we are working through. Unfortunately, we can't do some of these things as an afterthought. After we go live, let's see how we figure out. These are fundamental to our business, and therefore we need to have a clear idea about what we are doing, how we are doing, evidence it to regulators, to internal legal compliance teams before we go live, right? So those are some of the things that we are working on, Anthony, at the moment. Yeah.
Very good. And Roshak, how do you think about the operating model that you have and that whole legacy integration story?
Yeah, so we have a massive program going on right now, which is called the Modern Tech Program. And that Modern Tech Program is basically addressing a technical debt that has been accumulated over the number of years. And technical debt is basically end-of-life hardwares, end-of-life softwares, coding practices that have now become outdated, security issues around that. So over the period of years, we've got a huge amount of technical debt that has been accumulated. So before we can start integrating with any new emerging tech out there, the first thing is to address the technical debt that we have. And I'm actually pretty proud to say that in 15 years in UBS, I've never seen such a heavy amount of money investment that we've done to upgrade our technology stack, and we've been doing that. We are digital transformation. Cloud is not new, but moving thousands of databases, putting them onto the cloud, getting the scalability benefits, getting the additional computing power benefits, getting business resiliency as part of that has been a primary focus area. So one part of that is addressing the existing technical debt. And addressing legacy tech. Now, the next thing is when you're bringing any new blockchain or you bring any distributed ledger technology and trying to bring them together, there is a fundamental problem. What do you do about the integration points? Because you need to keep it secure right from the blockchain to your existing softwares. For example, if you're building a smart contract, you need to make sure the smart contract would only work if it can get access to real database or real data in our database. And that database is usually sitting in a relational database inside our network. So in order to connect the two together, you need some sort of a middleware technology. And there are many interesting companies out there who are offering this decentralized oracles, as they call them, which is like middleware technology through which you can do the integration points. So the things around that which we'll have to consider. One other thing I would say is that more to your point around governance and the operating model, we have started to come to the conclusion that there's a lot of tech out there which is in the market, and it's very difficult to keep pace with them in-house. So about 7 or 8 years back, we were trying to make sure that things are in-house. We are building softwares internally, but there's been a big push to looking at outside providers. There's a lot of skill sets. There's a lot of I would say niche skills out there, which is very difficult to replicate in-house. So we are going externally, and we are building consoles around that. So there's a lot of focus around risk consoles on vendors, software as a solution providers. That's something which we have been heavily invested in. But technology is just one part of it. The other part of it is other people. People are going to run this technology. And that's, again, a big push that we've been doing. There is a lot of focus on engineering skills and engineering resources. We've got our internal OKR, which says how much percentage of people need to be engineers versus how many people need to be in a non-engineering role. So there are a number of training programs, etc., certification programs to which we are building up the engineering skill sets. And I think that's important. If you have to integrate our existing tech with any emerging tech, you need to have people who can understand and run that.
Not only are you integrating the old and the new, but you're also going for an environment where all your tech used to be sitting just in your data centers behind locked doors. Right. Now you've got cloud, you're going through SaaS and then towards cloud, so you're managing those transitions at the same time, right? Yeah, very good. Okay, so actually I might just ask, because we've got both the big FIs and the leading fintech in this space, are there any questions, if you have any questions from the audience that you would like to ask the panel? Yeah, and I need somebody to run with hand mic to you. Here we go.
Thank you. This is a question for Roshan. As companies, I'm from the private equity side, we work a lot with UBS, and we're trying to figure out what UBS does on the tech side. And I think I've met closely to 4 different teams from 4 different regions saying that they're all doing it and they're leading it. And how difficult it is, like how centralized it is in terms of like governance and getting the backing of management. I heard that there are like 20 committees and one of them vetoes it and that project will be killed. And some service providers or GPs that are trying to get creative with UBS have been like incubating 4 or 5 months for this idea, and all of a sudden say, hey, this guy vetoed it. And these committees, you also have people that are non-experts. How do you deal with that, and where is this heading at? What are the types of frustration that you have as someone who is in the more innovative side of the business?
I mean, I don't know the specifics of the project that you're referring to, but I'm sure there must be some background and context to that. Like any organization, we are a big organization. I mean, I'm sitting here in APAC in Singapore. We have powers in our head office in Switzerland. We've got decision makers in Americas as well. So it is always a joint and a collaborative decision. I would say things are improving quite a lot. It is not fully centralized is a question, and I don't think we want to be that way. It's kind of an oxymoron trying to absorb a decentralized technology and trying to make all decision making centralized. We want to make sure that there's decision making happening in all the regions. I do not have a specific answer to your question because I do not, unfortunately, know the background of the thing that you mentioned, but I'm happy to catch up with you after this panel to understand more and maybe connect with you with the right partner. So if there has been an experience where someone felt that they were proceeding, but then they couldn't proceed further, we're happy to take a look into that.
Very good. I'm smiling here. I can feel a lot of empathy. Those who were here yesterday have got all the introductions and heard quite a lot from me. But my background, many years in institutions, CIO for a large French bank, and then now I'm a fintech. So I get to see both sides of that. And there's no simple answer to any of this, right? Large organizations are complex places. Decision-making process, it's always a balance between centralized, decentralized, how much you have to socialize and get buy-in for your projects and support for them. So I would say there's no simple answer to how you drive that efficiently. Right, we had a question a bit further back in the audience there.
Hello. Yep. Thank you so much for sharing. This is a question specifically for Karthik and Roshan. And both of you spoke quite openly about almost going live. And I'd just like to clarify, when you say almost going live, are you saying that HSBC and UBS are almost going live with a crypto offering? Or how do you define that, especially in the regulatory framework that we have?
So maybe I should clarify. I didn't say we're going live with something. As I said at the start, our position is very clear. Right now, we are not promoting or soliciting anything with respect to cryptocurrency to either our investors or clients. If a particular client comes to us and says they are interested in, let's say, Coinbase as an example, to invest in something, we'll help them with the execution part of it. But our advisors are not advising them as such. The thing that we're interested in is the underlying technology around that, which is blockchain, which is distributed ledger, and we're working with regulators, we're working with exchange houses in building that technology in distributed ledger. But specifically for cryptocurrency, we are neither soliciting nor we are working directly on that. But maybe I think it was you who said something.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. Yeah, to clarify, at the beginning of the session I mentioned, we are focusing on 3 things. One is digital assets custody, asset tokenization. Last one is experimentation with CBDC. None of them are about offering trading solutions or, let's say, actively promoting cryptocurrency trading. I can't reveal which one of these 3 that we are going to go live pretty soon, but you have to watch the press for that one. But it does go through the usual regulatory review and all the process, due diligence, etc., before we go live. Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions in the audience? Okay, so you've got this these innovative leading environment of digital assets taking you forward. You've got a large workforce, large IT and operations teams. How do you approach hiring and retaining and developing talent in your organization? You're obviously competing now with all of these fintechs out there who are offering share options and saying their company's going to be worth billions in a few years. So how do you approach that talent and looking after your people?
Yeah, of course, talent. It's not just a digital assets related topic. Talent is a big challenge for all of us. In general, across the board, all type of skills and not even just technical skills. So everything, talent, everyone is after the same good talent out there, limited talents out there. Some of the things that we are facing is when we start this program, the first decision is always easy, whether we build or buy. Like today, most of us are, let's say, partnering with specialists in the industry and onboarding certain predefined solutions and try to integrate with the platform. But the challenge comes when we have to start maintaining it. So that's when the rubber hits the ground, and then you have to, I mean, this is not the most glamorous piece of work because you have day in, day out, supporting issues, fixing issues, and get the system up and running. And that's where you struggle to find, let's say, a lot of good talent. It's always an issue. We are looking at different options. There's no easy answer there. Second one is, again, it's not just a technology-focused thing. We need to look at skills or talent in the support functions as well, because as one of the gentlemen asked before, how do we go through the process? The process is not just a product and a technology question, but it's about legal, compliance, risk, so on and so forth, and dealing with regulators, local regulations, and so on. So there's a lot of step involved, and all the people in this process have to have a deep understanding of the new world, digital assets world, and what it means. I mean, already we are hearing different definition for the same phrase and so on. So standardizing those things, bringing everybody to the same level is one of the biggest challenges for us from talent perspective. Yep.
Yeah, Roshan?
Well, the point here on compliance is pretty important. You can have your best tech resources, whether it's in-house or through contractors or whatever, right? But you build something, but one of the biggest obstacles in going live almost always is risk and compliance. And if the risk and compliance team are not familiar with what you're doing, they won't say no, neither will they say yes, right? Which kind of leaves you into a limbo, and that's probably the fastest way to lose your best talent out there. So I think the training that needs to be done or the hiring that needs to be done doesn't just need to focus on the tech resources, but also on your risk and compliance and upgrade them. I would say there are two things, some of which we are already doing. The first thing is around how do we hire? How do we build more fintech skills in the market out there? We are working with educational institutions, educational partners. For example, I'm sitting on the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology's education board, where we are working with the university partners to look into the curriculum that they're teaching to the students, seeing whether the skills that are needed are built into their curriculum. We are offering projects to students, not just for internships, which is what used to be, but throughout their 4 years or 3 years of their education, where they can work with us on real life projects, build the skill sets, and that can then generate the pipeline as to when they graduate, they can come straight in. So one is people out there trying to skill them. The other thing is looking internally at our own people. I talked a little bit about that earlier. We have a number of training programs. We are running boot camps almost every other weekend, where people can learn about smart contracts. People can learn about Ethereum. We are building people around that. There are a number of certification programs. We are sponsoring every employee in our tech to go through an Azure certification, whether you are working in a cloud-related project or not, because we want everyone to speak the same language, including our risk and compliance people. They cannot sign off on something if they do not understand what moving something to the cloud is. So there's a lot of things around that we're doing, and one other thing that I would say is all the partnerships that we are doing. It is one thing upgrading the education skills of people, but we need to walk the talk as well. We need to move away from, we need to move beyond POCs, is my point. There's been a lot of time when you do a POC, you have proven a hypothesis, whatever your hypothesis was, that yes, it does work, but then once the time comes to put it into production, that's when it gets stalled, because now it moves from an innovation budget to a functional budget, and then it completely goes to a reprioritization and a rethinking cycle. And I think that needs to change. If we are keeping talent, if we need to attract talent, they would only feel satisfied about it if they know that what they're doing will eventually see the light of day as well. So I think there are a lot of things to be done there. There's no easy answer. There's a big dearth of technical skills, technology skills, not just in distributed ledger or blockchain or any of that, but in general, technology. There is more demand than supply right now, and it's a problem. But I believe through all the measures that we are taking, all the measures that the rest of the industry are taking, it's going to get resolved.
Very good. And maybe to finish, Raj, what are the things, you're bringing new innovative tech, so you're introducing a bank to some new things, but what are the things that you learn from the large institutions working with them that maybe you didn't think about before?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, to be fair, there are some financial institutions that have had exposure from very early days of when the technology came out. So we do learn, and we did learn in our journey, for example, things about how to recover, right? How to build reliability. So things that, because they had to follow those standards from the beginning, right? Like, unlike us, sometimes we think about it after the fact, after all the functionality is ready and everything's working, then we start thinking about reliability and other things. They have to start by building that in. They can't start. So we learn a lot from that. And I think also, in general, this is a network that you have to create. There are different standards across different organizations. There are different mechanisms to integrate. There are different network configurations. So I think some of you pointed out, right? Where do you host your node? Does it have access to your backend systems? How does it have access? So I think many of those are learnings that we have, because this is a network that will not succeed without the financial institutions, right? Especially the custodians.
Yeah, I mean, I sensed a few years ago that fintechs and large banks were started talking a different language. They didn't understand one another. There was maybe a lack of respect either way around. And as these projects have moved forward and they're coming out of the labs and they're going to production, you see sort of this mutual empathy and understanding growing, right?
I think also, just to add, between Rahul and myself, we also come from big banks. So we do have the background and some level of understanding of when we were on the other side. Right, so we can anticipate some of those needs, understand. I think a lot of fintechs get frustrated because you're working at a different pace, you're working to different standards, and then you're working with a big financial institution that, for various reasons and valid reasons, right, have their more stringent standards, if you will, or different kinds of standards, and so on. And we understand all of that coming in. So I think that's it may not happen with all fintechs, but we are a little bit unique in that regard, I guess.
Very good. Any last thoughts?
On the last point, I think I agree. In the last couple of years, we've all come a long way. I think there's a lot of mutual respect, and we understand how the banks and fintechs complement each other, how we can take advantage of each other's strengths and work together. Ultimately, everybody realized that we have to work together to make this ultimately work. And that's a big positive step. And I see a lot of, let's say, positive thinking and collaboration happening now. No more us versus them or anything like that. It's together now, which is brilliant to see, actually. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Very good, which we see as a theme running through the whole conference, really, that collaboration and to make all of this a success, especially digital assets at a global level, is about fintechs, large institutions working together to make that a reality, right? A good note to finish. Thanks all. Thanks for a great panel.
Thank you.